Welcome once again to the reading of A Journey. We're now on chapter 26. This is episode 23, Unlikely Heroes. I think most people would tell you that they have some sort of heroes in their lives. Oh, by the way, if you hear any music in the background, that's Eric Clapton Unplugged. I'll start again. I think most people would tell you that they have some sort of heroes in their lives. That remarkable individual you have either known personally or have read or heard about, who you would consider a hero, at least to some extent. Many of us have read about some of the extraordinary men and women of the Bible and may consider some of them heroes. You know the ones, the heavy hitters like Abraham, the founder of the Hebrew nation. Or Esther, the orphan who became queen of Persia and who played a huge role in saving those Jews of the empire from certain destruction. And David, the shepherd boy who became king and who's known for killing the giant warrior Goliath with just a rock and a slingshot. We can't leave out Paul, the ultra-Orthodox who was well known for his persecution of believers. After an encounter with Jesus, Paul went on to author 13 of the letters found in the New Testament of the Bible. These are not the folks that first come to mind when I think of my Bible heroes. In the book of John, chapter 9, we're told of a guy who was born blind. While Jesus and his disciples were walking past this gentleman, the disciples asked who it was that had sinned to cause the blindness. The man or his parents. Jesus told them there wasn't anybody to blame, but rather it was to show the power of God at work in him. Jesus made some mud out of spit and dirt, which he then applied to the man's eyes. He told the blind man to go wash in a particular pool. Our friend with the muddy eyes went to the pool and washed as Jesus had said to do. When he came back, lo and behold, for the first time in his life, he could see. Not surprisingly, when this fellow returned and was able to see, his friends and those who had known him as a blind man begging in the street were pretty amazed. They kept asking him how in the world a man born blind could now possibly be able to see. He responded by simply telling them what had happened. Jesus put spitty mud over his eyes, told him to go and wash it off in the pool of Siloam, and when he did, he could see. Just that simple. Not long after, the man found himself in front of the religious leaders, who also started grilling him about what had happened. Once again, he explained how Jesus had put mud over his eyes, told him to go and wash it off in a pool, and when he did, he could see. Just that simple. Rather than be excited about the fact that a blind man had been given his sight, the religious leaders were instead all freaked out about someone having performed a miracle on the Sabbath day of rest. Some of them even said that what Jesus had done couldn't possibly be from God because it wasn't in line with their interpretation of keeping the Sabbath. They decided that the man couldn't actually have been born blind, so they called for his parents and started to question them. They asked his folks if indeed this was their son, if he was blind from birth, and how it was he could see now. The parents confirmed that yes, this absolutely was their son, and yes, he was born blind. As to how he was now seeing, they told the Pharisees to go and ask their son, that he knew what happened and that he was old enough to speak for himself. The leaders, who absolutely did not want to concede that a miracle of God had just been performed by this person called Jesus, told the gentleman that we know this man is a sinner, this man being Jesus. It was the response of the once blind beggar that I so appreciate. He said, "Whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." That's from John 9:25. Much like the blind man, much like the man who was once blind, there is a whole lot that I don't know, a whole lot that I don't understand. What I do know for sure, though, is that there's been a change in my life. The same Jesus who gave sight to this man has allowed me to see that life is so much bigger and has so much more to offer than what I could have imagined. Even during those confusing times when I'm not sure what's going on in life, and there's plenty of those times, I can still say, though I was blind, now I see. Another one of my favorite people in the Bible, perhaps the person I can relate to the most, is found in chapter 9 of the book of Mark. It's the story of a father who brought his son to Jesus desperately in need of help. The boy was mute and had often experienced some sort of seizure-type activity that caused him to be slammed to the ground, sometimes being thrown into fires and sometimes into water. It sounds pretty horrible. The dad had already tried to get help from the disciples, but they were unable to do anything. In near hopelessness, he asked Jesus to please help them. Jesus told him that all things are possible to him who believes. That's verse 23. The man's response was so incredibly honest and genuine, and it's what rings so true with me. He cried out, "I do believe, help me in my unbelief." Verse 24. That might just be the story of my life. I really and truly do believe. At the same time, I really and truly do need help in my unbelief every day. Maybe what I appreciate the most about the man who'd been blind and about the boy's father is the simplicity of what they knew and what they believed. I love the fact that even people with a simple knowledge and an honest, simple way of believing can still have a relationship with the Lord of the universe. You don't have to be a Bible scholar or a giant of the faith. You can be a simple guy like me. So, that concludes Unlikely Heroes. Our next chapter is actually the last chapter of the book. And I guess we'll talk to you then. Bye-bye for now.